The disquiet. Before the discovery, something inside you feels off. Conversations that once flowed now feel strained, even when nothing is being said wrong. You sense a tension you can't quite name. That's not drama, it's divine disturbance. When peace begins to fade from a relationship, it's not always because of conflict. Sometimes it's because God is gently preparing your heart to see what comfort has been hiding. The disquiet comes first, not to punish, but to awaken. You pray for signs, but often the first sign is internal. That uneasiness, that shift in your emotional rhythm, that question that keeps echoing after you hang up the call, it's not random. It's God stirring your discernment, calling you to pay attention. Love can blind you to timing, but peace never lies. It's the truest thermometer of divine alignment. When peace starts to tremble, heaven is trying to tell you something about your direction. You'll know it's not just insecurity because the feeling won't go away after reassurance. You can talk it through, patch it up, promise to start over, but the stillness never fully returns. That's not because something's wrong with your heart. It's because your spirit is trying to get your attention. The unease isn't rejection. It's revelation. It's the first whisper that says, the season is shifting. God rarely begins change with announcements. He starts with disquiet. It's his way of detaching your emotions before he redirects your path. The more you ignore the restlessness, the louder it becomes. What begins as subtle discomfort turns into fatigue, confusion, or detachment. That's why discernment begins with honesty. Stop calling divine warning mood swings. Stop explaining away what heaven is exposing. Peace isn't always gentle. Sometimes it breaks before it rebuilds. Sometimes God shakes what you thought was secure so that you'll stop mistaking consistency for confirmation. The loss of peace isn't the loss of love, it's the loss of permission. When he removes peace, he's signaling that something about the connection needs attention, adjustment, or release. Right now, if your heart feels unsettled, don't panic. Investigate. Ask, Lord, is this your stirring or my fear? And then wait for the tone of the answer. Fear screams, God whispers. Fear rushes, God redirects. When he speaks, it won't sound like accusation, it will sound like alignment. Every divine revelation starts with the divine restlessness. You're not losing your peace by accident. You're being invited into discovery. That inner tension is not to destroy the relationship, but to define it. The peace that used to confirm may now be pointing toward closure. And if you listen, you'll realize that what feels like the end of something might actually be the beginning of your healing. Sometimes what you call peace in a relationship isn't peace at all. It's predictability. It's the quiet that comes from walking on eggshells so long that silence feels safer than honesty. Many people confuse absence of conflict with presence of peace, but those are not the same. True peace breathes life. False peace drains it. False peace keeps you still when God is asking you to move. It's the kind of calm that hides tension instead of healing it, the kind that feels steady on the surface while resentment builds underneath. This illusion is powerful because it disguises itself as maturity. You tell yourself you're keeping harmony, but really you're avoiding growth. You downplay your needs, edit your truth, and call it wisdom. You tell yourself you're being patient, but your patience is just fear wearing holiness as a mask. The spirit within you doesn't rest when you settle for comfort over calling. That gentle discomfort in your chest is heaven's reminder. Fake peace is expensive. It costs authenticity. God never intended relationships to be museums of politeness. He designed them to be gardens of honesty, where pruning happens often and growth follows pain. When a relationship stops stretching you toward truth and only soothes your need for stability, it's no longer peaceful. It's stagnant. Harmony that depends on silence is bondage disguised as unity. If you have to shrink who you are to keep the peace, you've already lost it. The illusion of harmony often begins when exhaustion replaces communication. You stop addressing what hurts because it feels pointless. You start editing prayers about that person because you're afraid of what God might say. That's how emotional anesthesia sets in, gradually, quietly. But numbness isn't healing, it's delay. And the longer you live in that illusion, the harder it becomes to discern whether you're preserving peace or postponing truth. The Holy Spirit will always disrupt counterfeit calm. You'll start feeling internal friction even when nothing external is wrong. The laughter will sound hollow. The affection will feel routine. You'll leave their presence more drained than when you arrived. That is not love losing strength. It's grace losing permission. When peace leaves, it doesn't shout, it fades. And the wise heart notices the silence. God's peace doesn't make you smaller, it makes you whole. It doesn't require pretending, it invites truth. When peace is genuine, it expands your capacity for honesty without fear. You can disagree and still feel secure. You can confront and still feel connected. You can tell the truth without trembling. That's the difference between divine peace and emotional convenience. Take inventory of your relationships. Are you resting, or are you sedating yourself? Are you thriving, or just maintaining rhythm because it's predictable? True harmony costs confrontation, but rewards healing. False harmony avoids conflict, but breeds resentment. The illusion feels safe now, but it leads to spiritual exhaustion later. The question is not whether you're peaceful with them, it's whether you're at peace within yourself when you're around them. The moment you stop mistaking quiet for peace, you start hearing God again. His voice becomes clearer once you stop managing the noise. Sometimes the stillness you're clinging to is not serenity, it's suppression. Let him separate the two. Because when he restores real peace, it won't come from pretending everything's fine. It'll come from finally being free. Every relationship comes with signals, but few people are trained to read them. The Holy Spirit has built within you a kind of divine sensor, an inner alarm system that activates whenever peace begins to fade. It doesn't shout, it stirs. It starts as uneasiness during conversations that used to feel light, or as tension in moments that should bring rest. When that happens, it isn't paranoia, it's revelation. The discomfort you feel is not random emotion. It's heaven alerting your spirit that something in the connection is off balance. This inner alarm doesn't accuse, it awakens. It's not there to make you afraid of people, it's there to protect your purpose. The Spirit's role isn't to control who stays in your life, but to make sure only what's aligned remains. He alerts you before damage happens. That strange mix of peace and discomfort you feel isn't double-mindedness, it's discernment asking for attention. God never lets your peace leave quietly. If you're listening, he always warns you before your heart wanders too far. When your inner world becomes noisy after being around someone, it's time to pause. Peace doesn't require constant evaluation, but discernment does. Every time your emotions spike in confusion or fatigue, ask what your spirit is trying to say. Don't dismiss it as mood. The Spirit often speaks through subtleties, fatigue, hesitation, restlessness. Those aren't random. They're early indicators that alignment is shifting. The danger comes when you learn to silence this alarm. You override it with logic. Maybe I'm overthinking. You spiritualize avoidance. Love covers all. You excuse redirection as drama, but peace doesn't argue. When it leaves quietly. And if you keep forcing what grace has already released, the alarm will fade into background noise until chaos becomes normal. God designed this system as protection, not punishment. The same Spirit that brings comfort also brings correction. When the alarm goes off, don't panic, pray. Ask him to translate what you're sensing. He will show you whether the connection needs healing, boundaries, or release. The more you respond quickly to small warnings, the less he'll have to send painful ones later. You're not being sensitive, you're being stewarded. Heaven is teaching you to trust the subtle language of peace. When something feels wrong but looks right, listen to the feeling. When everything appears fine but your spirit grows uneasy, don't force calm. Follow clarity. God's guidance isn't always logical, but it's never confusing. The inner alarm system isn't a curse, it's a compass. It's not a sign that you're losing faith, it's proof that you're walking closely enough to sense his pull. Every alert is a mercy, every unease a message. If you listen early, you'll avoid unnecessary heartbreak later. Obedience to that still small warning may be the very thing that saves your peace and your destiny. There comes a point in every relationship where words stop carrying weight. The conversations keep happening, but connection doesn't. You talk, yet nothing changes. The same promises circle back, the same frustrations repeat, and somewhere in between sentences, something sacred slips away. When this happens, God may be speaking through what's not being said. Silence is not always absence, it's often instruction. Divine silence in relationships can manifest as unanswered texts, slower replies, canceled plans, or simply a fading rhythm. You sense the distance, but can't explain it. Don't rush to label it rejection. Sometimes, it's a pause written by heaven. God will quiet a connection when the noise of routine starts drowning out revelation. He doesn't end it harshly. He lets it fade softly so that peace can speak louder than explanation. When peace starts replacing conversation, pay attention. It's not that you've lost communication, it's that you've outgrown noise. Every relationship has moments when heaven presses mute to reset the tone. Maybe the bond needs rest. Maybe you've been carrying the dialogue alone. Maybe you're speaking out of habit, not harmony. Silence becomes sacred when it gives room for truth to surface. The hardest part is that silence often feels like abandonment. You'll want to fill it, fix it, talk it through. But some silences aren't meant to be filled, they're meant to be felt. God allows these pauses to reveal whether your attachment is emotional or spiritual. Emotional ties panic in silence. Spiritual ties pray through it. The difference shows you who's meant to stay and who was sent for a season. Silence is also God's tool for revelation. When someone stops engaging, you see more clearly what they contributed and what they didn't. You notice whether your peace grows in their absence or shrinks. You notice whether you miss their presence or just the pattern. In those quiet spaces, discernment sharpens. God's whisper becomes audible again because the volume of human interference has lowered. When silence enters a relationship, don't chase it. Study it. Ask yourself, what is this quiet trying to teach me? Am I clinging to familiarity, or am I open to divine redirection? Sometimes the fading conversation isn't the problem, it's the closure. God may be ending communication in the natural because he's finished the assignment in the spiritual. If you find yourself in that pause right now, resist the urge to chase clarity from them. Seek it from him. Let the silence stretch without fear. In that stillness, you'll discover that peace never really left. It was just waiting for the noise to die down so it could speak. Every relationship has a rhythm, and peace is the heartbeat that keeps it alive. When that rhythm changes, heaven is trying to tell you something. The peace pulse check is the moment you stop analyzing the words, the promises, and the potential, and you start measuring how your spirit feels before, during, and after every encounter. The Holy Spirit often speaks not through what people say, but through how your peace responds in their presence. Pay attention to the patterns. Before you see them, do you feel anticipation or dread? During conversations, do you sense expansion or exhaustion? After leaving their presence, do you feel lighter or heavier? These fluctuations aren't coincidences, they're spiritual data. Peace doesn't lie. It reports truth faster than words can explain. When peace consistently declines in someone's company, that's heaven pulling back alignment to protect your next assignment. God uses emotional consistency as a compass. When you're in the right connection, peace flows without effort. It stabilizes, it steadies, it anchors you. But when a relationship starts draining you, He doesn't always send thunder to warn you. Instead, He adjusts your peace like a heartbeat skipping and warning. That uneasy rhythm is your sign to slow down and listen. The peace pulse check requires brutal honesty. Stop saying we're fine when your spirit disagrees. Stop labeling exhaustion as sacrifice. Stop pretending constant tension is passion. If being around someone regularly pulls you away from rest, clarity, or your time with God, that is not connection, it's corrosion. The peace of God doesn't need defending, it sustains itself. Try this test in silence. Before you meet them, pause and sense your spirit. During the interaction, observe your breathing, your tone, your thoughts. Afterward, note whether you feel nourished or drained. That's the pulse report. Over time, the pattern will tell the truth. When peace increases, God is expanding the connection. When it decreases, He's signaling you to pause or release it. The longer you ignore it, the more turbulence you'll feel until obedience becomes unavoidable. Don't confuse familiarity with peace. Familiarity feels safe because it's known. Peace feels safe because it's divine. Familiarity comforts your habits. Peace confirms your purpose. When you choose familiarity over peace, you trade growth for nostalgia. God will disturb what you're used to if it's hindering what you're called to. Sometimes you'll find peace returns the moment you set boundaries. That's how you know the relationship needed structure, not separation. But if peace only comes back when distance increases, that's your answer too. The pulse doesn't lie. You don't have to diagnose every detail. Just read the rhythm. God communicates through patterns of peace like a cardiologist reading the heart of your destiny. If your peace keeps warning you, don't wait for collapse to confirm what conviction already revealed. The loss of peace is not punishment, it's protection. When God withdraws peace, He's guiding you out of danger before you can name it. Trust that instinct. Peace is not a mood, it's a message. And when you learn to take your pulse regularly, you'll never again mistake anxiety for love or chaos for chemistry. Every relationship lives in rhythm. Just like nature, it moves through seasons, purpose, process, and pause. Understanding which one you're in can save your heart from confusion and your spirit from exhaustion. God doesn't let relationships exist in chaos. He assigns each one a divine timeline. The mistake many make is trying to keep a connection in bloom when heaven has already declared it fall. The first season is purpose. This is when the relationship begins with clarity and alignment. Energy flows easily. Conversations feel guided. There's a sense of divine timing, like both hearts arrived at the same place without forcing it. In this stage, God uses connection as confirmation. Every interaction carries purpose. Every exchange multiplies peace. You know you're in this season when your relationship pushes you toward growth, obedience, and deeper intimacy with God. Purposeful relationships don't drain you. They develop you. Then comes process. This is the building stage, where imperfections surface and refinement begins. The sparkle of beginning fades, and truth starts to work its way through. You'll face friction, but it's sacred friction, the kind that polishes character. This is where love shifts from emotion to endurance. God allows conflict not to destroy the bond, but to deepen it. But here's the key. Process is supposed to be temporary. When the refining work ends, the relationship either matures or moves. Many people get stuck because they mistake process for permanence. They think endurance means endless repair. But once the purpose of the process is complete, peace begins to lift. That's the Spirit signaling transition. And then there's pause, a season we rarely respect but desperately need. God uses pauses not to end relationships, but to reset them. Sometimes the bond is still divine, but the rhythm is off. The pause is where healing happens individually, so that restoration can happen collectively. It's not rejection, it's recalibration. You might stop speaking for a while, not out of bitterness, but to breathe, to grow apart enough to return with perspective. If you resist the pause, you'll break what could have been rebuilt. The peace test for this moment is simple. Does the relationship still carry grace, or are you forcing gravity? Grace lifts, gravity drags. Grace allows room for honesty. Gravity traps you in guilt. When God pauses a relationship, peace leaves just long enough to wake you up, then waits on the other side of obedience. Knowing your season changes everything. In purpose, you nurture. In process, you endure. In pause, you release. Confusion only enters when you treat one as the other. Trying to keep process alive after purpose has ended creates spiritual fatigue. Trying to rush pause before healing is done creates premature connection. Discernment is learning to let the Holy Spirit define the rhythm instead of your emotions. Ask yourself, is this person pushing me closer to purpose, helping me process growth, or teaching me to pause? Once you know that, peace will tell you what to do next. Because God's seasons never compete with each other, they complete each other. And when you honor the timing of the relationship, you stop forcing people to stay who were only meant to shape. One of the strangest ways God guides your heart is by suddenly dimming the spark. You wake up one day, and the person who once felt like a match no longer feels like home. The chemistry fades, not because something broke, but because something higher began. God sometimes hides attraction to protect your assignment. The same pull that once served your growth now threatens to delay it. And so he gently turns down the emotional volume until you can hear his direction again. When chemistry fades, the human response is panic. You question what changed, replay moments, blame yourself. But this divine withdrawal is mercy. God isn't removing love. He's removing distraction. The same magnetism that once connected you was designed to bring a lesson, not a lifetime. Once the lesson is complete, grace lifts, leaving peace where passion used to live. It's not abandonment, it's transition. This is how God guards destiny. He knows that emotions can cloud discernment. When you start needing the person more than the presence of God that introduced you to them, heaven intervenes. The shift feels confusing, but it's protection in process. What once excited your heart now stirs restlessness because the season is over. Chemistry was the doorbell. Calling is the invitation. You're being asked to move from connection to conviction. It's dangerous to chase what God has dimmed. Many stay in expired bonds, trying to revive feelings that heaven buried. You can pray, cry, fast, but if the peace is gone, no ritual will restore what obedience has already released. God doesn't resuscitate expired assignments. He redeems them through revelation. What you're mourning as loss is really God's way of freeing your capacity for what's next. You will know He's hiding chemistry when clarity grows where confusion used to live. You stop obsessing. You start seeing. You no longer crave constant communication. You crave completion of your healing. That's maturity taking root. God didn't end the connection to punish you. He ended it to prepare you. He knows the weight of your next season and what attachments can't come with you. When peace replaces passion, don't resist it. That's not coldness, it's closure. It's your spirit aligning with truth. You're being trained to recognize that real connection is sustained by calling, not chemistry. The emotions will fade, but what God taught you through them will stay. Let that be enough. The peace you feel now is not emptiness. It's evidence that heaven just turned the page. There comes a point in many relationships when both hearts stop moving at the same pace. One person feels anchored, while the other feels anxious. One still believes the connection is flowing with grace, while the other quietly wonders why peace feels foreign. This imbalance is not always emotional instability. It's often divine revelation. When peace divides, heaven is clarifying direction. God uses peace as a marker of alignment. When He begins transitioning one person ahead of the other, He lifts peace from the bond to signal that the season of synchronization has ended. It's not rejection, it's release. You'll know this moment because no amount of talking, planning, or fixing can restore what was once effortless. Conversations that used to bring closeness now bring tension. Meetings meant for reconciliation end in fatigue. The harder you try to make it feel right, the more strained it becomes. Peace doesn't respond to performance, it responds to purpose. The test of unequal peace teaches you that unity cannot be manufactured. If you have to convince someone to stay in what God is calling you out of, you're not protecting love. You're resisting leadership. Sometimes God moves peace ahead of you so that you'll follow it. He lets the calm leave so your spirit begins to move, even before your logic understands why. You'll notice one person finding joy in distance, and another feeling desperation in closeness. This imbalance is not unfair, it's instructional. Heaven is synchronizing exits and entries so that destiny remains protected on both sides. Unequal peace exposes two different assignments. It's possible for two good people to outgrow each other's grace. What once was partnership becomes classroom, a place where both learned what they needed to carry forward, but not to continue together. When God lifts shared peace, He's not punishing connection, He's preserving calling. If you try to drag someone into a future they weren't built for, you'll both lose balance. This test also reveals whether your loyalty is to the person or to God's voice. When peace begins to separate you from what feels familiar, do you chase emotion or follow spirit? The mature heart learns that divine peace is never cruel. It just chooses alignment over attachment. Some exits are assignments completing themselves. The sooner you accept that, the sooner the ache turns into clarity. Unequal peace doesn't mean the relationship failed. It means its mission succeeded. It produced growth, forgiveness, resilience, empathy, everything heaven needed it to teach. When that work is done, grace departs quietly. Trying to force harmony beyond its purpose only creates spiritual noise. Let the imbalance reveal the instruction. One of you is being sent, and the other is being settled. Both are sacred. When peace no longer fits both hearts equally, that's your signal to stop forcing connection and start following direction. Trust the shift. You don't need both hearts to agree. You only need one to obey. Because when you release with honor, peace will return. Not as a feeling of relief, but as confirmation that heaven never divides without purpose. There's a moment in every heart where love refuses to admit that peace has left. You keep trying to repair what heaven has already released, believing that if you just pray harder, love deeper, or explain better, the relationship will return to what it was. But sometimes what you're calling perseverance is resistance to closure. The trap of fixing what God is finishing is one of the most painful spiritual lessons, learning that grace doesn't linger where assignment has expired. God's grace sustains what He ordains. When peace consistently declines despite effort, communication, and prayer, it's not because you failed. It's because the season has served its purpose. Heaven is not cruel, it's strategic. God doesn't end connections impulsively. He finishes them when the fruit has been harvested. But because we confuse love with longevity, we often try to breathe life back into what He has already completed. You will know you're caught in this trap when effort feels like warfare, not growth. Every conversation becomes correction. Every attempt to fix turns into fatigue. You pray for unity, but your peace disappears every time you reconnect. The Holy Spirit isn't punishing you, He's protecting you. He removes the ease so you won't confuse nostalgia with calling. God doesn't destroy what's His. He simply withdraws His hand when the work is done. The need to fix often comes from guilt. You tell yourself, I can't give up now, forgetting that release is not giving up, it's growing up. You think restoration means clinging tighter, but sometimes the holiest form of healing is letting go. Jesus didn't chase Judas out of the garden. He allowed separation to fulfill destiny. Some exits are sacred. They aren't betrayal, they're blueprint. If God is finishing something, peace will confirm it long before logic does. Conversations that once restored you now drain you. Memories that once brought warmth now stir confusion. The spirit within you starts grieving while your emotions still hope. That grief isn't punishment, it's the sound of completion. You can't fix what heaven has finalized. Here's the truth. Not every connection ends because of failure. Some end because of fulfillment. A divine purpose was accomplished, a lesson was learned, a version of you was refined. Staying past that point doesn't bring revival, it brings resistance. When peace lifts, it's time to trust that what's ending is just one chapter of a larger redemption story. The trap tempts you to rewrite the same ending until exhaustion teaches what obedience could have revealed sooner. But when you finally release control, something shifts. The heaviness breaks. Peace returns. Not because the person changed, but because you stopped trying to force what God already finished. When you release what no longer carries grace, you make room for what's next. God never closes one door without preparing another, but He won't let you enter it with the weight of unfinished chapters dragging behind you. Let the closure be complete. Let peace, not pride, have the last word. What He finishes is never wasted. It's simply fulfilled. Every relationship that challenges your peace will eventually mirror your own maturity. It's easy to point at the other person, to catalog their inconsistencies, to frame the story around what they failed to see. But maturity is not proven by how quickly you diagnose others. It's proven by how deeply you discern yourself. The mirror of maturity is where God turns your focus from reaction to reflection. Every relational tension is a classroom where heaven asks, who are you becoming through this? Peace doesn't just reveal who fits your life, it reveals who you are ready to love. When frustration keeps repeating, it's not always a sign of the wrong person. It's often a sign of unfinished growth. The same patterns follow you until the lesson turns into transformation. God uses relationships as mirrors, not microscopes. He's not showing you what's wrong with them so you can fix them. He's showing you what still needs refining in you so He can free you. When you stand before this mirror, you begin to see how immaturity bargains with peace. You start realizing that your need to always be right costs connection. Your avoidance of confrontation hides wounds that need words. Your tendency to rescue people from their consequences often masks your own fear of being abandoned. This is where growth happens, not in blaming, but in seeing. Maturity also means recognizing when you've outgrown a version of yourself that certain relationships still expect you to be. The more you evolve, the harder it becomes to fit into old dynamics. The peace test isn't always about leaving others. Sometimes it's about leaving who you were when you met them. God matures you through friction because smooth seasons rarely change character. Conflict reveals capacity. The true test is response. When peace wavers, do you attack, withdraw, or reflect? Maturity pauses before reacting. It asks questions like, what is this teaching me? And am I repeating a pattern or redeeming it? Immaturity wants closure from people. Maturity finds closure in obedience. The more you grow, the less you need others to validate your peace. You start to carry it yourself. Every relationship you've ever had has been a mirror. Some showed kindness, others exposed insecurity. Some reflected your strength, others revealed your fears. The wise don't resent these reflections. They use them. Maturity doesn't mean you stop hurting. It means you stop hiding from what hurt reveals. As you grow, your definition of love shifts. You realize love is not rescuing, it's respecting. Not controlling, it's covering. Not demanding agreement, it's offering grace. When God matures your love, He teaches you to protect peace without punishing people. That's when you know you've passed the test. The moment you can bless someone's path, even when it no longer includes you. So before you decide whether to stay, pause, or move on, stand in front of the mirror. Ask, what version of me did this relationship awaken? If it grew your patience, taught your discernment, refined your empathy, then it wasn't wasted. God doesn't send people to complete you. He sends them to reveal you. And when you can look in that mirror and still choose peace, you'll realize maturity isn't about winning hearts. It's about guarding your own with wisdom. There is a sacred kind of wisdom in knowing when to step back without walking away. The permission to pause is not about abandonment. It's about awareness. It's when God whispers, "Be still," not because He's finished working, but because He's preparing you to see differently. Every healthy relationship requires rhythm, and sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is stop forcing flow and allow space to breathe. Pausing doesn't mean you failed. It means you're faithful enough to stop guessing. It's the maturity of surrender, choosing stillness when your emotions want movement. In this season, God isn't asking you to decide whether to stay or leave. He's asking you to stop doing both. You don't need closure yet. You need clarity. And clarity rarely speaks in noise. The pause is where you learn to hear again. This moment often feels like loss because your heart has been trained to equate love with constant communication. But God knows your spirit can't heal at full speed. He allows distance not to disconnect you, but to detox you. Emotional space reveals what was authentic and what was attachment. The bond that survives silence was never dependent on presence. It was rooted in purpose. Many fear the pause because they confuse space with separation. But pause is not rejection, it's restoration. God pauses connections the same way a musician pauses between notes, not to end the song, but to emphasize what comes next. In that stillness, He recalibrates hearts, redefines motives, and restores peace. If you rush the silence, you'll miss the transformation. During the pause, things become visible that weren't before. The pressure to please lifts, and the truth begins to surface. You notice how much energy you spent fixing what should have been flowing. You realize the difference between fighting for someone and fighting yourself. And in that realization, peace starts returning in gentle waves. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped interrupting it. The pause is also God's way of testing trust. Can you hold the bond loosely enough to let Him handle it? Can you stop checking your phone, replaying conversations, or trying to predict outcomes? Trust isn't proven when everything feels secure. It's proven when you stop grasping and still believe the connection's purpose will unfold exactly as it should. If the relationship is meant to continue, the pause will strengthen it. If it's meant to end, the pause will prepare you. Either way, peace wins. God never wastes silence. He fills it with instruction. You'll come out of the pause lighter, clearer, and freer. Not because you let go of someone, but because you let go of control. So, if heaven has slowed your rhythm, Don't force what grace has paused. Sit in the stillness. Let peace stretch. What feels like distance is often divine surgery. And when it's done, you'll look back and realize the pause wasn't the end of something good. It was the beginning of something whole.